Your tween says, "Give me the milk." And something suddenly gets really big inside you. Your body tightens, your tone changes, and before you know it, you say, "Don't talk to me that way." And at the time, you feel 100% justified in saying it like that, as though saying anything else in any other way would leave you feeling totally defenseless. Why does this happen so fast? Why do we feel so justified? And what other choices might we have? Welcome. I'm so glad you're here, my friends. This is Self-Led Parenting Live, where we explore how to stay connected to our kids and to ourselves, especially in the moments that feel the most emotionally activating as parents. My name is Jacqueline Long. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work alongside a wonderful group of clinicians supporting children, teens, adults, and families across California. And today, we're talking about something that so many parents experience: when our child's tone leaves us feeling really activated inside. And before we go further, if you've ever reacted strongly to your child's tone, you're not alone. I want you to know that your reactive parts are welcome here. All parts of you are welcome here. And if questions come up, please just drop them in the chat. I'd love to try to respond in a future episode. So let's slow this moment down together. Imagine this. You're standing in the kitchen, you're tired, you've been taking care of people all day, your nervous system is already carrying a lot. And your tween walks in, you're happy to see them, and they say, "Give me the milk." Not, "Can I please have the milk?" Not, "Hey mom, can you pass me the milk?" Nope, just, "Give me the milk." And maybe the tone feels sharp, demanding, dismissive. And suddenly something happens inside you. Something inside of you is on fire. So let's slow this down, because between your child saying that something in that tone and your outward reaction to them, there's something important that might be happening in the middle. And I like to think of it as an emotional bruise that might have been touched. Sometimes when our kids use a certain tone or do a certain thing, it can unknowingly, accidentally touch on an old emotional bruise inside of us. We can think of it like a shoulder injury. Maybe as a kid, we fall out of a tree, land on our shoulder, and it breaks. Yes, this did happen to me. And we can't wear a cast on our shoulder blade. So we're walking along, and someone comes along and says, "Hey, how's it going?" and pats us on the shoulder. And we say, "Ow, that hurts." And the other person is totally confused and defends themselves, saying, "But I only patted you lightly. I was trying to be friendly and say hi." So just like a shoulder injury that no one can see on the outside, our emotional bruises are not visible, not to anyone out there. And emotional bruises are even more confusing because the person carrying the bruise inside might not even be aware that they have this bruise at all. Or maybe they know they have this bruise, but maybe they don't know that it's still a tender place inside of them, right? Our emotional bruises might be connected to moments that happened decades ago, where we once felt small, put down, left out, dismissed, disrespected, not heard. So when our tween says something in that tone and it activates us, it helps us as parents to remember it might be touching on an emotional bruise that was probably already there. It might just be that an old bruise just got touched by our tween, by their words or their tone or their facial expression, like, that can activate us. And the pain can happen so quickly that we think, "I'm reacting to my tween because they did that." But often something older got touched inside and caused an internal fire to ignite, and suddenly we're aflame. So let's look at this moment together. Our tween says, "Give me the milk." And the bruise inside of us gets touched. This is my friend from Inside Out. Sadness, in this case, this is the vulnerable one, the tender one, the one carrying the emotional bruise. And suddenly, when it gets touched, we're on flames inside. Oof, that tone hurt. That felt disrespectful, and I suddenly feel small. I don't feel very important right now, right? And then suddenly, the first responder is there at the scene, like a firefighter, fast, with urgency, ready to put the fire out any way it knows how, not caring that it's bringing damage to the house with all of the water it's dumping on it, not caring if it ruins the relationships. It just wants the fire out. And it says, "Excuse me, you do not speak to me like that." It's like the house is on fire, and as soon as the smoke alarm went off, that first responder is there, 100% committed, ready to protect and defend on the front lines. And it happens so quickly that we often don't realize that the vulnerable part got touched first. And the reactivity we're feeling comes up to defend. So there's this connection between vulnerability and protection. And this is important because usually there are protective parts inside the tween too. Maybe a part trying to sound powerful. Maybe a part trying not to feel so small themselves. Maybe it's due to something that might have happened earlier that day or that week. Maybe at school or even at home with a sibling or even a pet. Kids can feel powerless for all sorts of reasons. So now, both nervous systems are trying to protect vulnerable parts at the same time. And things escalate quite quickly when there's a parts war. "Give me the milk." "Don't talk to me that way." It happens almost instantaneously. This understandable, protective reaction, this parts war. And I want to say something important here about respect. Respect matters. Tone matters. How we speak to each other really matters a lot. But sometimes the intensity of our reaction can tell us something important about what got touched inside of us as a parent. Sometimes our child's tone doesn't only feel frustrating, it can also feel painful, hurtful. And often that pain inside of us has its own whole history. Patty Whiffler from Hand in Hand Parenting says, "Anytime a reaction is bigger than the moment calls for, it often has deep roots in the past." So that brings me to another kind of metaphor of time travel. Sometimes in these moments, our nervous systems can almost time travel. Part of us is suddenly no longer here with our tween. Part of us might be back in time with a critical parent, a sibling, a bully, a whole classroom of kids, on the playground at recess, a moment where we once felt humiliated or dismissed or powerless. And when that younger, more vulnerable part gets touched, a firefighter protector can rush in immediately, trying to help us feel strong again, protected again, important again, trying to do for us now what nobody knew how to do back then. And that makes sense because these parts are dedicated. Protectors are committed to protecting us. But here's the hard part. Protectors often accidentally create the very thing they're trying to prevent. Our protective parts often accidentally, unknowingly, unintentionally create the very thing they're trying so hard to prevent. The firefighter protector might want respect, safety, control, but when the reaction comes harshly, the tween's protectors often react back. If not then, maybe later that day or that week. Right? You can hear the tone in both of our voices. And as a parent, if I'm coming from an extreme part of me that's activated, I'm asking my kid to not give me tone, but at the very same time, I'm giving them tone right back, right? Because I'm coming from an extreme protective part of me. And so over time, the dynamic can actually grow more intense. It's this downward spiral, more disconnection, more defensiveness, more attitude going both ways, more escalation, more internal fires. So the firefighter, while trying to protect the system, can accidentally reinforce the unwanted cycle, all while trying very, very hard to help in the best way it knows how. So, what do we do? What do we do with this as parents? We can slow down. We can turn inward. We can explore the U-turn. When we have all of this energy pointing at our tween and what they just said, we can come back home to ourselves. We can say out loud, something's happening. I'm just going to take a moment here. And maybe internally, only to ourselves, saying, I think something just got touched inside of me. So instead of only focusing outward on the tween's tone, we begin to bring our attention inside and become more curious about ourselves. What just happened inside of me? Where do I feel this in my body? What younger part of me suddenly felt small and in need of my protection? And can I bring just a little more curiosity there? A little more warmth? A little compassion? Taking a moment to help the vulnerable part of us feel less alone. I'm right here with you, sweetie, and I care about you. Because boundaries land differently when they come from our pure self instead of from a protective part of us. It's where the boundary comes from within us that matters most. If we're parts led from a firefighter that's protecting something vulnerable inside, it might sound like, you do not talk to me like that. If we're in touch with our vulnerable one inside, as well as the firefighter trying to protect us, and we're in relationship with both of these parts of us, we might say, hey, let's slow down. I want to help you. And I also want us to speak respectfully to each other. Can you try that again in a different tone? Or I might take a moment with my parts inside and just simply say, not like that, sweetie. Or I might simply role model for them how I want to be spoken to. Like I can repeat it, how I'd like it to be said, like this. They say, give me the milk. I take a moment and I say, can I please have the milk, Mom? Same boundary, different nervous system, more self-energy, different outcome. It just helps to keep in mind their activated parts will activate our parts, and our activated parts will activate their parts. Alternatively, our self-energy will help to draw out their self-energy. So instead of a downward spiral, our self-leadership creates an upward spiral. And our self-leadership emerges when we can be in relationship with the different aspects of ourselves and our own inner life. So just take a moment Can you think of a recent interaction where your child's tone felt especially activating? See if you'd be willing to just notice what happens inside as you remember that. Where do you feel that in your body? And see if you might gently wonder, what is my reaction protecting? If I didn't react this way, what am I concerned might happen? And just seeing if your protective system might show you that emotional bruise it's trying to protect you from. And then just see if you can bring a little compassion there, not to fix it, just to be with it. If you need a little more time with that, just press pause, put the video on pause, and you can come back and join us in a moment. If you're feeling ready to move on, now I'll read a letter written from capital S self, or our deep, wise, loving self, to the firefighter part, the one that reacts like a first responder when something tender and vulnerable inside gets touched. It's called To the Firefighter Who Rushes In. Dear firefighter, thank you for trying so hard to protect me. I know that when you rush in, you're trying to help stop me from feeling small. You're trying to help me feel strong again, safe again, important again. And I know you learned all of this honestly. There were moments earlier in life when I felt dismissed, put down, unheard, or powerless. And nobody slowed down long enough to notice what was happening inside their own internal system or inside of me. So, of course, you learned to react quickly. Of course, you learned to get loud, to protect, to defend, to push back hard. I get it. You were trying to help. And I'm grateful for how hard you've worked to protect the vulnerable parts of me inside. But I also want you to know something. The small, vulnerable parts inside us don't only need protection, they also need connection. They need warmth, understanding, compassion, care. And more, I want to help those younger parts experience this from me. Not by getting rid of you, not by pushing you away, dear firefighter, but by helping you trust that I'm here with you as capital S self. I'm here and I can help now too. You don't have to carry this all alone anymore. And maybe if we work together, I can speak for you instead of from you. And maybe that way we can role model how we want to be treated. And we can advocate for our system without losing connection with our tween. So, thank you for trying so hard to protect us in the very best way you know how. Just remember, I'm here for you. Love, capital S self. So let's take a moment to let that letter land. And here are some key takeaways. 1, what looks like disrespect may just be something getting touched that's older inside of us. 2, vulnerable parts often get touched immediately before our inner firefighters react. 3, firefighter protectors move fast. They react to help us feel safe and strong. 4, protectors often accidentally reinforce the very cycle they're trying to help stop. 5, internal connection and self-leadership help change the dynamic over time. And 6, when we take time to self-regulate, we help to co-regulate. So, the next time your child's tone feels incredibly activating, see if you can pause long enough to wonder, what just got touched inside of me? Because that moment, that slowing down, can begin changing the cycle, moment by moment, part by part, And maybe that's how the tone between us begins to shift. That's how warm tones can be passed down across the generations like a family blessing. Maybe that's how generational healing unfolds. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing some of the most important work in the world, raising kids. And I'll see you next Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific.